Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of The Watch Collector. My name's Ollie. Today we've got a bit of a curveball in terms of the watches that I would normally review, and I'm quite excited about this. Before we get onto that, obligatory wristwatch check. Today I'm wearing the Vincentera Tycho T2. We're looking at a brand called Daniel Roth. It's not one actually that I've come across other than having read about it in person before, number one. Number two, I think the name precedes it. Arguably a master watchmaker of our time. This watch, the Sentier 177, is particularly special. Number one, it invokes, in my eyes, the Art Deco opulence of times gone past. With its double-ellipse stainless steel case, it's immediately identifiable and distinguished from pretty much any other watch on the market. It's extremely elegant whilst being, as I've mentioned, hiding in plain sight. You know precisely what this is as soon as you've seen it, if you know or have heard of Daniel Roth. But we'll talk about the dial in a second, but actually probably what makes this watch even more special over and above the shape and the finishing of the case and the bezel is what's underneath. Because actually what you've got here is you've got the Daniel Roth automatic movement that's based on a Girard-Perregaux 3100 with a 46-hour power reserve, automatic winding, Code de Genève, excellent finishing, knurled base plate. You don't, at this price point, around about 13,000 if I'm not mistaken, it's very rare to get a watch of this caliber, forgive the pun, with this level of finishing, with a movement based, as I said, from such a powerhouse like Girard-Perregaux. Really is outstanding. So let's flip it back over. One of the really lovely features of this watch is it uses tritium. Now, tritium was the old way that watch manufacturers used to glow in the dark. It's effectively the predecessor to superluminova. And what I love about it is it's instantly recognizable. You can see it on the end of the hands. And the way that actually the color, which hopefully it comes out on the camera, interplays, it's like very light lime green, interplays with the blue hands, both hours, minutes and seconds. It really adds a colorfulness and a playfulness to the dial. Of course, otherwise is somewhat monochromatic. I love the way that the second hand is offset with almost like a counterbalance on the other side. And then finally, of course, you've got an incredibly elegant dial within a dial with Roman numerals. Always nice to have, whether Roman or Arabic, as opposed to just batons. Not only does it give an added layer of intrigue, it's also more expensive to do. It's much easier to simply just have one baton, another baton, another baton. This way, they actually need to go through that process of not only coming up with the font, but it's not just the same process over and over again. That I think I love, and it complements so well, as I mentioned, this double elliptical nature of the case. Another thing I love, the date at 6 o'clock. It gives it a symmetry and it just adds to the overall elegance and aesthetic that undoubtedly this watch has. It's 38.5 millimeters in diameter and only 7.8 millimeters in height. So we're going to throw it on the wrist in a minute, but this is absolutely a dress watch of real presence, but in my view, understatedly cool way. Let's put it on the wrist and see what happens. Now, first of all, hats off to Daniel Roth for giving us a deploying clasp. Thank you, Daniel. And let's face it, bearing in mind the weight of this watch, which is very slight, you don't even need the security of the deployant clasp, but that just tells you the level of detail that they've gone to make this watch feel special. So absolutely hats off to them for that. The bracelet, or should I say the strap, is old school class, not a huge amount of bolstering, but very high quality leather. And it feels as though it feels like the strap that you would get on an old officer's case. That's how I would describe it. Now, 38.5 millimeters is not large. And of course, you also end up with the fact that because it's double elliptical, and i.e. not round, it wears larger than you would expect. And given the fact that you've got those overly extended lugs, that really they cut through the double-stepped nature of the bezel, but it's not jarring, and it absolutely flows between the lugs and the bezel. The design is actually extremely elegant. Now, as I mentioned, invoking times gone by, you could see a piece like this in The Great Gatsby or something similar. It really does sing to me in terms of opulence and class, and at this kind of level of price, as I said, around £13,000, to get something that is so obviously identifiable, unmistakable, and I wouldn't go so far as to say unique, but certainly getting that way. I think they've done an absolutely superb job, coupled with that old school, as I said, tritium treatment for the hands, and on top of that, based on the Girard-Perregaux movement. I mean, let's face it, what more can you ask for from a dress watch? Perhaps you might want it in precious metal, but that aside, wow, this is a superb offering with real character, and notwithstanding the fact that it is only 38.5 millimeters in diameter and just 7.8 millimeters in height, it's got real presence too. So that's the Daniel Roth Le Sentier 177. Somewhat surprisingly, bearing in mind the size, I'm a fan. I think I've got a lot of time for this watch. I think it's something that would work well almost on any size wrist, regardless of the size. And that's not normally something I would say if you've seen my other videos, but the design of it really works well. So guys, that's enough from me. That's the Le Sentier 177. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.